So, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining me for today's CoolCare masterclass, where we're going to be looking at rota management today. Our first of two webinars we'll be doing are on the rota management CoolCare. This one focusing on the basics side of things. As I'm sure you're all aware, CoolCare here is to make operating your care home easier, more efficient, and more profitable. Looking at making things easier today with our rotas and a bit more efficient after that as well. So, using Zoom today, if anyone does have any questions as we're going through, you should be able to use the Q&A option on your Zoom window to ask any questions you have. You can just pop them in there and either I'll answer them as we go through, or a member of our team is on hand as well to answer any questions you might have on that. And once we've gone through the initial content of the session, we'll have some time at the end for you to ask any further questions on there. So if you do have any lingering questions as we're going through, you can stick around at the end and ask as much as you want. So anything you think of at all, don't be afraid to ask. What we'll be looking at today is, as I mentioned, our rotas, specifically the rota management. So as I'm sure you might know, CoolCare's rotas are a powerful tool to help manage your rostering for your staff members in the home. This one will be focusing on day-to-day management of our staff on the rotas and the basics of how to do so. In that, and the one after that in a couple of weeks' time, we'll be looking at some more advanced stuff you could do on the rotas as well. But for today, we'll be focusing on kind of the basic stuff. So adding our staff onto the rota and finding cover shifts, seeing which staff members are available and how that can affect stuff. How we can then change staff and swap shifts around if we need to move little things on the shifts that we have staff assigned to, as well as how the calendar in CoolCare interacts with our rota for things like holidays, absences, how that's going to affect our shifts and our assignment from our staff members on there. So we're going to crack on and get to my demo system. As always, just fictional data for the demonstration purposes I'll be showing you. So no real data on this. Let me just swap over to my demo system and we'll get started. Right, if I share my screen, you should see CoolCare on there now. So to start with, I'll tell you what, even before we get into what we're looking at, I'll give you a brief explanation rundown of the rotas for those who are completely new to them. On there it is, isn't there? There are actually two parts to the rota in CoolCare. The care home section includes the rota setup. We'll not be looking at that in this session, but that's essentially where you do the initial creation of your rota in terms of creating an ideal template that our live rota, which we'll be looking at, will work to on there. Let's say what we're focusing on in this session is under the staff section, the rota in there. This is our live rota, taking that kind of template you've done in the rota setup side of things and putting it onto live days and dates. When you open up the rota, it will take you to today's date, as you can see there from today, and it will show you the next 4 weeks of your rotas from there. So you can see if I scroll across, it will go up to the next 4 weeks, up until the 11th of August from there. But you're not limited to just viewing that. If you need to go further than that, you can click the date at the top and plan as far ahead as you like. I want to see past August into September, for example. I can choose a date in there and see all the shifts in there. So when you do the initial rota creation, you'll create a template version. In my case here, that's a 2-week rolling rota I've got set up on my system. So what you'll see on here is kind of 2-week shift patterns and 1-week patterns on here, repeating from there. And some of it just a block of shifts that need filling out. So the kind of say, 2 main ways you can build the rota, which means there's 2 main ways we can get the staff onto the rota. So with the staff, obviously at the moment I've got no staff on my rota here, but there's 2 ways we can get our staff onto these shifts. We can either add a staff member, assign them to a repeating shift pattern. So if you have set patterns on your rota that have an individual working on all the shifts on there as a rolling rota, you could be added on through that way. Or we can just add staff onto shifts individually. If we don't have a set pattern or we just need to drop people into shifts one by one, wherever they might be, we can add them in there on an individual basis as well. It's very much whatever works best for you. So to get the staff on there, we'll start with the repeating shift patterns like I put on the top of my rota here. You can click in this staff column on the left-hand side where it's currently empty because no staff members assigned. You click on that, it'll bring up this box for you. This box will tell you there, this is a shift pattern for a senior carer I've chosen on my case here. That'll be obviously based on the position you've selected. And you just assign a staff member to the shift pattern, you first have to choose their start date, when the person would start on the pattern from. Now that could be just from right now, from today. You could do it from a date in the past if you want to backdate it slightly, or you could even plan it ahead in advance in the future as well. I'm just going to stick with today's date for this first one. And once you choose the start date, then it will show you all the staff that are able to cover that shift pattern from that date, based mainly on their position. So in this case, this is anyone in my home that has a senior carer as a position on the staff record. And as you'll see in the box here, it will tell me if this is their main position, and I'll have a tick there. If they don't have that tick, it means that their main position is something else, but this is an extra position for them. So this is an additional role they can work as and do shifts as if they need to. Either way, you can still put them on here. The main thing to be aware of with this is you can only add staff with contracted hours onto a shift pattern. So if anyone should be on here that you can't see, it may be that they're bank staff on CoolCare and thus can't be put on a repeating shift pattern from there. But in this case, you just pick the person you want, click on them there, and it will then highlight them in blue. From there, you then click the Assign Staff button to save it. And one thing it will check is against your calendar. Now, we'll be seeing that in a bit more detail after this. But essentially, if the staff members have any holidays booked into your calendar already, it will tell me there this staff member has authorized holidays for 6 shifts after this pattern assignments, just to let me know that that's going to be happening. So all that means is if I click OK to that, it's going to assign a staff member to the shift pattern and put them on all the shifts, except for where they have a holiday. In this case, one of their holidays is next week, so you can see there 4 days they have in as a holiday there. But after that, they have the repeating shift pattern from there. Yeah. If you see that little pop-up box come up when you're assigning a staff member to a shift pattern, just means they've got some holidays booked in already, and it's not going to put them on those shifts. Now, with that staff member assigned to that shift pattern, they'll say on their repeating. So as I showed you, if you were to go ahead on your rota, to next month or whatever, as far ahead as we want, they will remain on that shift pattern repeating. So they'll be on there essentially permanently for as long as you want them to be there. And again, like I say, any holidays they've got will not be booked in. So you just assign a staff member to the shift pattern once, you can then lead them to it, and that is them dealt with. And it will also pop the name in the staff column underneath that as well, so you know which staff member is on which pattern. So we can do that a few times to get filled up. And when a staff member is then assigned to a shift pattern, you can see when I go into another shift pattern, it tells me there that this staff member is already assigned to another pattern, so I know not to put them on both on here. So I can just pick another staff member and assign them from that, just like so. And we can do that a few more times. These are my care assistants here, so different staff that are available for it. Again, based on their role, we can just pick who we want and assign them all in there. So I'm just going to get these shift patterns all filled in. I'll pop in a few more. And just the last 2. There's another holiday that's booked in, so we know they're not going to be put on one shift somewhere after that. And the last one there. Right. So that is all those shift patterns then filled in. Now, one thing to be aware of is sometimes it won't put their name in the staff column right away. Just a small thing to be aware of with the system. All you need to do to see them is just reload the rota. You can go out of it, come back into it, and then we'll see everyone's name against each pattern. Simple as that. So that's the first way you can add your staff onto the shifts, is just by putting them on a permanent shift pattern, and they'll essentially remain on there for as long as you want. The other way you can do it is by instead assigning a staff to individual shifts. So where we might not have set patterns for staff members, or where we need to find cover on individual shifts day by day, we can instead just click on the shifts themselves. So if I click on this one care assistant shift underneath all my shift patterns here, I can click on that and see all the staff that are available for it. And this will be anyone that can cover this shift, whether it's their main role, whether it's an extra position for them, whether they're pull staff from another home, whether they're bank staff. Anyone with the right position can cover this shift, as easy as that. You can see all the names in here, some details for them, whether it's their main role, whether they're pull staff from another home in your company, whether they're bank staff in the home on there. The hours assigned is how many hours on the rota they have from the past week. So in my case, they're all 0 because no one else is assigned to many shifts on here on that. But as I then add in those shifts and add the staff to them, you can see how many hours I've done, so you know what hours everyone has from there. The number is just a contact number for them if you can get in touch with them from there. Other events is actually, again, what we'll see when we look at the calendar. Any holidays, absences, stuff booked in for them already. Or if they're already booked into another shift, you'll see they're assigned to shift down the bottom, and they'll be grayed out, so you can put them on 2 shifts at the same time. And also the option to message them, which actually we see more on the session. But from here, to assign someone to the shift, you just click on the person you want, and there, it puts them on the shift right away. So it's just immediately click on the shift, choose a staff member, see everyone who's available, choose your staff member, and assign them to it from there. As easy as that. So if you're using the, let's say, more flexible rotas for staff that don't have set patterns, you would just be going through each shift individually and adding the staff to them, going through one by one. As easy as that. And additionally, when you're assigning staff to shifts, if you need to, there's even the option to cover the shift with agency. You see the brown button at the top there, covered by agency. If you can't find a regular staff member to cover the shift, you can instead cover it with agency staff instead and fill out all the agency details from there, whatever we might need. Just like that, they get filled in as well, and you can see how there it goes brown compared to blue, where it's easily spotted. There. So that's the idea with just adding the staff to the shifts, is just popping them on there, like I say, either with repeating patterns or going through on the individual shifts from there. Now, and that's fine if things would stay as they are, and that's kind of our general plan for the shifts. However, we can move things around and change them as we need to. As I say, we're looking at changing staff and swapping shifts. To do either of those, you can click on a shift that has a staff member assigned to it, and you'll get a few options on there. Changing the staff and swapping the shifts, which we'll be looking at today, and unassigning deleting, which we'll be looking at more actually in the next masterclass. There. So, changing staff is just changing who's on that individual shift, just changing it essentially from one person to another. For example, I use this agency one. Let's say with the agency here, I've actually found a staff member that can cover this shift now, so I don't need the agency actually in there anymore. I can click on that shift and use the blue button there, change staff. If I click that button, it will then bring up just all the staff who are able to cover that shift. Similar to assigning a staff member to a shift initially, it's just seeing everyone who's available and adding them in there. Just picking the person who wants, and it just changes the name from one person to the next. As easy as that. So if you need to change who's doing an individual shift, just click on it, change staff, and then just update the name from there. Next, you can then also swap shifts around. So if two people have agreed to swap their shifts and you want to update the rota to reflect that, you can do that through here as well. Let's say I use my two seniors, for example, the seniors for Thursday and Friday, and you want to swap their shifts. We can click on either one of them and then use the purple button there, swap shift. Click on that, and then pop in the details of, we need to find what shift we're swapping with, sorry, on there. We can pop in the dates to say we'll swap with a shift on the Friday. And there you can then see the staff member who they can swap with. In this case, it's just the other senior carer on that. And then swap shift to swap those two around. And just like that, those two shifts are then swapped from there. So just essentially changing around each shift together, just changing who's assigned to either one, swapping them from there in one go. Doesn't move the actual shifts themselves, just changing who's assigned to either one. So if you are doing shift patterns on there, you can see kind of which part of the shift pattern was part of originally, and you know there that the swap has taken place. So yeah, that's your changing and swapping of shifts from there, just the basic stuff to move things around where shifts need changing. And that's now the other thing we're going to look at is then how holidays and absences can affect this, your rota here. As you can see, they've already slightly affected it from the holidays that I had already booked in on my calendar for next week for that senior. But how do they actually get on the system and how do they affect our rota? Well, they're all done through our calendar under the staff section there. The calendar here, you can add on holidays, absences. You can also record training for staff, but for this session, we're just looking at the holidays, absences. Basically, you put them on here, and it lets the rest of CoolCare know what's going on, including the actual taking them off of the rota. So if we need to add something in, we can just choose the date we want to add it in for. Let's say I'm going to put in a holiday for someone on this Friday. We'll click on that date and then pop in a holiday request. Excuse me. From here, we can then choose a staff member we want to add the holiday in for. See all my staff available. See which ones are actually on the rota for that day. Let me just double check so we get the right ones. On Friday, we'll go for one of those two. Well, where are they? There we are. And from here, you can choose a date of holiday. If it's just the one day, you can leave it as is. If it's multiple days, you can pop in, change the end date on there. And you can then see the hours that come across on the rota. That's the hours that's going to be taken off their holiday entitlement for them, which you can adjust in there if you need to. Excuse me. And by default, they'll sit as requested while we're still figuring it out. But the way it will affect the rota is when you authorize the shift, or the holiday, excuse me, on here. So when I mark the holiday as authorized to say, yep, they can have that day off, if I save that, this box will then pop up asking, would you like to remove the staff member from the rota for that holiday? I can say yes to that. And what that will do is authorize the holiday in here. And from there, if I go back to my rota, we should now see for this Friday, I've got there the holiday booked in for that staff member, so they've been removed from that shift. And from there, it works like assigning staff to shifts. We just click into it, we can see everyone who's available, and we can then choose who we want to do the shift from there. That's, that's how holidays affect it, and the absences work very much the same way. Once again, going to the calendar, we can pop in an absence instead. I go for today's dates and go for absence. Absences would be things like anything that's not a holiday, essentially, things like whatchamacallit, sickness, appointments, anything you can think of that's not a holiday that would require the staff member to have time off, you can pop it in as an absence. Just like the holiday, you choose which staff member it's for. You can see your options in there. If they're on the rota, they'll tell me if they are. Just see. Okay, we'll go the same actually. We'll go with the other one. No, in there. Again, you can see their hours come across from their shift pattern. And like with the absence as well, we need to also choose the reason in there, saying why they're absent. Like say that could be sickness or other reasons that are set up in your system. You can choose from in the list there. And again, the main thing that will take them off the rota is when you authorize the absence. That's basically letting the rest of the system know that the absence is confirmed. And once I save it, the same box pops up there. Do you want to remove the staff member from the rota for that day? And you've also got the option there, yes or no. If we say yes, then once again, the absence will be added on here and feeding back to my rota. You can see there the absence has been taken off that shift as well. So we know we need to find cover for that one. So yeah, that's how I say the calendar interacts with Rota is just taking them off the shifts on there. There is an additional thing it will show you as well if I click into those shifts. When we're looking for cover, you can see here in this other events column, as I mentioned previously, when you put stuff on the calendar, that will show up in here as well. So you see there in a little pink just says absence for that person, so we know they're unavailable that day. And if I were to check the other one, the holiday, again, you can see there the holiday authorized for them in there as well. So you know not to put people on shifts if they've got holidays, absences on the calendar. We know when they're unavailable on that. However, unlike where they're already assigned a shift where they're grayed out, if you needed to, you can still put someone who's on a holiday, who's absent, into a shift if required. So if someone's agreed, they're on a holiday, but actually they can cover a shift, if it's required, that need is there. You can still put them on the shift even if they're on holiday on there. So just be aware you can still assign to the shifts if required. Yeah. One additional thing to mention with cover for shifts as well, for kind of where you've got also the single shifts there, you could assign someone to those to cover them. If I just click on them, I can pop someone into those shifts to say who's covering it, and that will just pop the name in there nice and easily. However, if you've got, say, a longer term holiday or absence in here, so like this is like the full week they're off, you could just assign someone to those shifts individually. However, you can also assign them to all the shifts in one go to basically cover that original shift pattern. To do that, so you click where it says their name in the staff column, and you'll have this additional option at the top there that says covered. What that will do is, you can see there, we can assign someone to cover the shift pattern between specific dates. So I can do it for next week from the 20th up to the 23rd, those 4 days. And again, we can see everyone who's available to cover those shifts on there. We just choose the person we want. And the blue box at the top there just says they will be put to cover all the shifts within those dates as long as they're not doing anything else that day, as long as they don't have another shift booked in, any holidays, absences, or training booked in on the calendar. It's not going to affect them. It's just going to put them on the shifts they can do, which hopefully in this case should be all of them. And it is, as you can see on there. And question someone's asked just on the holidays themselves as well if an employee cancels their holiday and you have to delete the holiday from the calendar, will it automatically reinstate them on the rota, or do you have to manually add them on? If you were to delete someone from, if you would delete a holiday, I can actually show you in the apps in the example here. So if I were to delete that holiday for this Friday, staff members turn around, change their mind, they no longer want that day off. We can delete the rota from the delete the holiday from the calendar here. It says, "Are you sure you want to delete it?" Yes, and that is then removed from there. However, going back to the rota to answer your question, no, it does not put them back on there automatically. The calendar will only remove people from shifts on there, so it's not going to have that other feedback the other way if you delete um, delete the calendar, delete the holiday from the calendar. So if they do then change their mind, you just have to then reinstate them back onto the shift from there. That's so yes, good thing to be aware of if you are changing the holidays or deleting them on there, they can be seen from that. Yes, just be aware, make sure you put them back on the shift if they are changing minding on the holiday. And in that case, with all of that covered, that would be everything to look at for this first part of our rota management on that. So next time we're going to be going a bit more detail on how we can move things around in terms of changes of timings on the shift, how staff can interact the rota with messaging and stuff like that. So you'll be seeing all that stuff in our next webinar in a couple of weeks' time. But before then, just a couple of things to let you know about before we wrap up for the day. If you are interested in any additional training on CoolCare, feel free to get in touch with us at the training team. You may be entitled to some free of charge training as part of your CoolCare subscription. You should have at least two 30-minute sessions if they haven't been used already. So feel free to contact us at training. We can either email us or phone us up, and we can check your entitlements and get some additional training booked in for you if you're interested. And for any additional assistance on CoolCare, you can get in touch with our support team. You can either call them up, they're available Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. You can also email them or use the live chat option within CoolCare itself. Again, available Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. But out of hours, there is an AI assistant available on that live chat as well. And if you have any other queries regarding your account on CoolCare, your subscription on the system, you can email our customer success team as well, or any other additional stuff you might need. But otherwise, thank you all for joining me for today's training for this masterclass. Hope that's all been useful for everyone. Do come back next time. In 2 weeks, we'll do our next part of the rota management, which we're looking at more advanced stuff on there. And if you do have any feedback on the masterclasses, please do scan the QR code on screen and you can send us feedback on there. Let us know what you'd like to see a masterclass on, and we might take it into account and do a masterclass on what you'd like to see. So do let us know, and we always take that feedback into account. It's great to have it. So otherwise, thank you all for joining me for today. And I say 2 weeks' time, we'll be doing our next one, looking at Rota Management Advanced. And if you do have any other questions, feel free to stick around and you can ask them on the Q&A option on Zoom, and we'll answer any questions you've got. Thank you all for coming, and do have a nice day.